Now it's time to hear the stories of Utes in their own words. This is Utes Insider presented by Pepsi. Here's your host, Mike Legasholt.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show as we get started with our second month of Utes Insider presented by Pepsi. I'm your host, Mike Legasholt. Well, as you turn the calendar to June, you start to think about postseason softball and baseball in most years. And in this year, an Olympic year, you start to think about the Olympic teams taking shape. And unfortunately, with the coronavirus shutdown, we will have none of that this year. But we still thought it's that time of the year when people want some talk about those things. And we thought a great person to have on as a guest is Hannah Flippen, former Utah softball player who was the first three-time All-American in the softball program's storied history, also the first four-time All-Pac-12 honoree in Utah softball history. So Hannah, who competed for the Utes from 2014 to 17, will drop by and look back at a great run for the Utah program. You know, the Utes, it took a couple years to get their legs under them in Pac-12 play, but when Hannah Flippen's group came in, they turned things around. They went to the regionals in 2015 and then back-to-back super regional appearances in 16 and 17. And you might remember that great run in 2017. Utah played Washington in a three-game series in Seattle. They lost the first game, won the second, and had a tight loss in that third and final game, but a great run by that Utah team in 2017, finishing 14th in the final national poll. And Hannah was obviously, as an All-American, a major contributor to that team, but she's got a chance to do something pretty special. Hannah has made the U.S. national team for softball a couple of times and was named to the U.S. national team roster last fall, and was going to be one of the individuals competing for a roster spot for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. Well, that's been moved back to 2021. Hannah is still hopeful of making that team. She'll talk to us about that, as well as looking back at her great career at Utah. That's when we come back in just a moment with Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi.
To hear more episodes of this show and other Utah athletics podcasts, search for them on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Now back to more of Utes Insider presented by Pepsi.
And welcome back to the show. Pleased to be joined by one of the all-time greats in Utah softball history, Hannah Flippen, who now is hanging out with family in San Diego and joining us. Hannah, thanks for the time this afternoon.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Great to have you. We'll talk about your career at Utah and what's ahead with the U.S. national team in a bit. But, first question is how have things been for you since the shutdown? Everyone's sort of gone their own way, and you saw a chance to go back home and spend some time with family in the San Diego area. So what have you been up to the past couple of months?
Yeah, the past couple of months, I've cracked open some books for the first time since college, probably. And done some more personal reading than the textbooks that I opened up in college. So that's been pretty fun to just read up on either some novels or some inspirational books. But I've enjoyed that. Obviously, watching all the shows. And I have a little puppy named Jack who I enjoy taking on walks and hikes and doing all of my quarantine activities with. He's been a pretty good companion for me to have during this time. But hanging in there, just doing home workouts. Thankfully, the University of Utah set up a program to where they can loan out equipment to the staff members. So fortunate enough to get some equipment at home and keep training and just kind of living life. It's been all right.
Yeah, I think all of us who have dogs enjoy having them because they're an excuse to get out and do something. You know, you got to take the dog for a walk a couple times a day. So I've done the same myself. You know, your situation since you were joining the U.S. national team, you were not a full-time assistant coach this season. You stepped away from that, but I know you've been involved with the kids and the program since the shutdown. So now that you're kind of back into an assistant coach role, you've been in contact with the players. How are they all doing during this shutdown? I mean, it was kind of an abrupt end to their season. They were up in Seattle, ready to play some games, and then everything was shut down. So how are the current Utah softball players doing?
Yeah, definitely initial shock factor, of course. But after coming back home and kind of reflecting on all the things that are happening, our team's got some good heads on their shoulders. And so they understand what's going on and what had to be done, but they were definitely disappointed. But now that we're a little bit past that, we're connecting on more relationship level and just outside of softball. And it's been really cool to watch and just to be a part of. We do Zoom calls every week and talk about books that we're reading and the things that the kids are baking or making or hiking. And so it's been really cool and a great opportunity to get to know them a little bit more outside the softball field. And it's been good to create those relationships with them.
I've had some conversations on these podcasts about Gen Z and how this, current group of college students and athletes are doing. And some of them love the idea of being home. Some of them have thought, wow, this is a great opportunity. Some really struggle with the idea that, hey, we're geared to be athletes and we have a schedule and we have sort of a pattern that we've followed that's been interrupted. So how is this current group of players doing with sort of this change and this dynamic of all of a sudden being sent home a couple months ago?
Yeah, we definitely have a little bit of all of that. Some kids are like, when can we come back to Utah? When can we come back? When can we come back? Because they're just like had their freedom and they want it back because now they're living at home with their mom and dad. But so we have a couple of those and then a couple of the older kids that are really enjoying the time with their brothers and sisters and moms and dads and just taking the time to just slow down for a second. But we definitely have a mix of it all. But I'm sure they're so eager to get back on the softball field and back at Dumpke Family Softball Stadium.
As we head into the month of June, that's the conversation now is, when can we get the student athletes back on campus? When can we get students, period, back on campus? Now that that's being thrown around as a possibility over the summer, do you sense a little excitement growing amongst the group?
Definitely. There's definitely the itch. They're asking, when's the gym going to be open? When's it going to be open? And we're just kind of saying, sit tight. Like, we'll let the the fall athletes come on campus and get their bearings. We're a spring sport, so there's no need for us to rush into anything. But it is definitely, they're itching for it. But I'm so grateful that I work for the University of Utah and went to the University of Utah because our faculty and staff and president, I think that they're handling things amazing and the leadership has been unreal and the communication and transparency and all of that stuff has been so great. So the students are itching to get there and they'll get there. I'm confident that we'll get on campus soon.
Yep. Sure. I'll second all that. Leadership has been tremendous, and it's been a fluid situation, a lot of big decisions made in tight time frames, and they've done a great job. And the good news is it sounds like they got a plan for fall to potentially open some things up and have a combination of online learning, in-person learning, and get people back on campus, and hopefully it all works out as we head toward fall. Let's talk about your background, Hannah, a little bit. You are from Bonita, California. You're back there now in the San Diego area. But your mom played her collegiate softball at Utah State, and I'm guessing, as most parents do, they have a little influence on where their kids decide to go to college. So when you were looking at Utah and Utah maybe approached you, what was mom's level of input in your collegiate decision on where to go?
Yeah, well, I think if my mom had it her way, she would have wanted me to stay in the backyard of San Diego, down the street somewhere at San Diego State where she can be there every day and go see every game in person. But I ended up going to the University of Utah, and it was the best decision ever. And the whole Utah State, University of Utah kind of thing, it didn't really play a factor because my mom knew that it was my decision, and she knew that I was going to be the one to make the decision. And so she kind of stayed out of it for the most part. Obviously, she gave her input, stay close to home, go somewhere warm, go somewhere that was great. And thankfully, I found a couple of those things. The University of Utah wasn't across the country. It's a 12-hour drive from San Diego. It's an hour and a half flight. So it was just close enough to stay close to my mom and dad, but just far enough to where I could get some freedom, some individuality and some growth and independence and all those things. So truly couldn't have picked a better school for myself. It was the perfect fit for me, and I'm so grateful that they found me and I found them. So
it's been interesting over the years, this Utah softball program. They've had a ton of kids come from California come in and play major roles in this program. And, back in the 90s when they were going to the College World Series in 91 and 94, there were a lot of in-state kids, Utah kids playing softball for Utah, sprinkled with some kids from California that came in and made an impact. And now that Utah's in the Pac-12, it's become very heavy out of state, very heavy kids from California like yourself. So as you were looking at Utah and trying to decide where to go, obviously the lure of playing the Pac-12 was there, but what were some things about the Utah program that stood out and ultimately led you to becoming a Ute?
Yeah. you mentioned it, the Pac-12, it's an elite conference, but also the fact that it was on the west side of the United States. I didn't want to go far from home, but wanted to go far enough. So that was a huge thing for me. And the coaching staff, I had Coach A, Coach Max, Coach T, and Coach Russ on the staff when I was being recruited. And they're just phenomenal people, like top down, great people, great humans, good coaches, like everything that you would ever want in a coach, they had it in the staff. So they really got me to Utah. So I'm very thankful for that. But also the campus is unreal. Coach T also always likes to call it like the diamond in the rough. Like you don't know how beautiful it is until you go and see it and visit it. And it's so beautiful. And when you get there, like you don't want to leave. And that's pretty much what my visit was like when I was in high school. I got to the campus and I was floating. I was like on cloud nine with the biggest smile on my face, the beautiful mountains, like snow-capped, green trees everywhere. Like the stadium was beautiful. They were renovating it. It was brand new. And so there's so many things to love about the state of Utah, which is a big reason why I picked it. But coaching staff was for sure high on that list. And just the family and the culture that they created there was high on my list. And that's what got me there.
I've had coaches for years say, if we can get someone to come on campus and visit, we've got a good chance to get them because, like you said, you maybe know about Utah, but it's not as high profile as some other schools, especially now that we're in the Pac-12. But if kids will come and take a visit, and there's so many good people here that they fall in love with a place like you did, and they've got a chance again to come, what you did, and we're so grateful you did. You were such a big part of that run for Utah from 14 through 17. We'll talk about that in a moment, but let's get back to your mom. As I mentioned, she was a pitcher at Utah State, and 4 kids in the family. You were the only girl, so if there was a prodigy to pick out of the litter, you were an easy pick. And obviously, you probably had some interest in softball and sports to kind of help that process. But just talk about how you got started in softball and the role your mom played in your development over the years.
Yeah, I got started at Bonita Valley Rec League, which is just down the street across the valley from my house. And so that is where it all started. And maybe it started before that when I was in diapers running around at my mom's games, because she still played fast pitch softball into her 40s, really. She played in adult leagues. And I would go and watch and bring my glove all the time. And all of her teammates would want to play catch with me. And so softball was like everything that I was around 24/7 all the time. And so that is really what sparked it. And as I played at Bonita Valley and got my friendships and really just came into the sport and just learned how to love it and love the competitiveness, and I loved winning. And those are all the things that my mom loved too. And so she passed those traits off to me, the competitiveness and just willing to do whatever it was to win. Those are definitely things that sparked the softball itch in me. But just like softball was in my life, so was baseball. I grew up with 3 brothers, and we were always in the front yard playing wiffle ball and always going to the baseball field, always watching the MLB games, going to San Diego Padre games. So the sport of baseball and softball was a heavy presence in my life from the day I was born. So like you said, I was pretty much born into it. But I love the sport, and I'm so happy that this is the one that I was born into.
Your mother, Mary Lou Ram, again, an All-American pitcher at Utah State. She pitched. Was there any chance you were going to pitch, or did you kind of settle on an infield position pretty early?
Well, my first all-star team at Bonita Valley, it was raining when we had tryouts, and then they picked the team, and they said, okay, we're going to meet up at the field so that everybody can meet everybody, all the players and the coaches and the parents. And it was pouring down rain. And so all the girls ended up going into the girls' bathroom and meeting each other and hanging out. And then apparently the coaching staff and the parents were like, okay, so we need a catcher. Is there anybody that can catch? And I had never caught in my life, but my mom was like, hell, I'll do it. Yeah. And so my first position was a catcher when I was 8 years old. And then as I grew up, I kind of just bounced all over the field, shortstop, second base, catcher. And eventually, probably when I was 9 or 10, I did get in the circle and I pitched. But I think my mom kind of knew that she didn't want me to be a pitcher. I think she thinks I was more athletic than her. She might kill me for saying that, but I think she saw a little bit more potential in me to kind of be a more athletic person playing shortstop or something like that. But I definitely had my stint of pitching, and I'm definitely happy that it did not last very long. But I could never pitch. It's so stressful, and I commend them for doing what they do. But I love to play the middle infield and shortstop and second base, making all the diving plays and on the run throws and the Sports Center top 10 plays. So I'm happy that I've steered away from the pitching lane and up the middle infield.
Now, speaking of your mom, I understand she could be a little intense. In fact, she would watch games from the outfield near the scoreboard when she would come to Salt Lake, the Dumpke family stadium, and she wouldn't sit in the stands because she wanted to be able to kind of vocalize and do her thing. Was it difficult to please her when you were growing up a little bit?
I would say that she would have been happy with whatever performance I put out there, but definitely she just wanted me to do the best. Like she wanted me to be the best. She wanted me to bat 1,000. And she was nervous. And that's why she would sit in the outfield. And she just wanted me to perform so well. She knew that I wanted it so bad. And so she got nervous for me. So she'd sit in the outfield or she'd walk around like she was never sitting in one spot. And she actually told me a story that when she played in the national championship for Utah State, my grandma, her mom, was at the game, and my grandma was at the park across the street picking up trash because she was too nervous to watch the game. My mom's pitching for the national championship, and my grandma's not even watching because she's just too nervous.
Oh man!
So I guess that's where my mom got it from. But I know that my mom wanted me to perform so well, and it was hard. Like my freshman year and sophomore year, we had our bouts and we had our struggles, but ultimately, like, she knew that this was my process and that I was an individual and needed to figure it out on my own. But she was always there to offer some advice or support or mechanics, whatever it was that she thought was helpful. She'd shoot my way, and sometimes that would end up in me saying, "Mom, stop." But thankfully, though, my dad was kind of like the middleman between us because my dad, he was involved in sports and loved sports, but he knew that my mom and I had the same competitive itch. And so he would kind of step in between and say, "Hannah, you want to go get some ice cream?" Or, "Hey, let's go over here. Let's do this." Kind of be that middleman for when things got a little too hot and heated. But so I'm grateful for obviously my mom's relationship, but also my dad for kind of being the middleman and making sure that we had a good relationship with all that.
Oh, that's awesome. It's fun to hear the stories and find out the dynamics of parents and kids, especially parents who played at a high level. I mean, they have it in them. They see it in their kids and that process of finding out how much to push, how much to pat them on the back. And a thing I found that is sometimes the higher level they played at, the harder it is for parents to just sit and watch a game. I mean, that nervous energy and that competitiveness just boils up, and they got to do like your mom did, which is just get away from the fans and have a place where they can pace around and withdraw a little bit because it's hard for them. But it's fun to hear your stories about her growing up in the role that dad played. So great stuff. So, okay, you come to Utah, you leave California. You grew up, in the shadow of UCLA, and at that point, Arizona was a good program. You come to the U, and at that point, listen, Utah softball was still trying to find its legs in the Pac-12 Conference. It wasn't a great start, but your group came in, and to me, that was really the core that changed the direction of Utah softball. I don't want to say change direction. It helped the growth process is maybe a better way to put it, because it was a good program, but your group came in and back-to-back super regionals in 16 and 17. But just talk about, Hannah, the growth process of the softball program during your 4 years. It had to be a lot of fun to be a part of that.
Definitely. I think our freshman year, that class of freshmen, didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. We showed up to Utah, we were ready to play some softball, and that was that. And it turns out that everybody was kind of turning their heads at that point, like, who's this new Utah team that's starting to win some games? Yeah. So for us that freshman year, it was kind of just like, this is like normal for us because we were on elite travel ball teams, and we would win games there. And so to come to Utah and hear some noise and kind of hear our teammates talk about like, oh, this is fun. Like, we're playing, we're winning, we're competing. And so we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into that freshman year, but Sophomore year, we're like, all right, let's go. Like, this is the year where we're going to step it up even more, actually have a grasp on what we're competing for. And that was the postseason. And it's crazy because I remember sophomore year, we played Tennessee earlier that year, and we ended up losing. Maybe we beat them my sophomore year. We've played Tennessee so many times. But during that stint, that preseason couple weekends, we were like, all right, if we go postseason, we're going to end up at Tennessee. And sure enough, Selection Show Sunday comes around. We're at Tennessee for regionals for the first time in a couple of years for Utah. So just the progress every year of constantly getting better and not even really recognizing it. Each player on that team just wanted to be better a little bit for themselves, but just for that program of Utah. It wasn't to outshine UCLA or outshine Oregon. It was just to make the program of Utah softball better. And ultimately, because of all the little things that we did and all the individual work that we put in, it got us where we wanted to be. And it was such a cool experience to just be a part of the team that didn't go postseason. And then we made it to the first round. And then we made it to the first round and went to the second round. And then, we just took a step up every year. And that's not something that happens that easily. Usually it takes a couple years for a program to get here and then a couple more for you to get to the super regional. And we went back-to-back super regionals, one game away from the College World Series. So I'm really proud of the growth that the program had. And I'm so lucky to have an impact on that. And I hope that other players get to have that same impact. Hopefully in the next couple of years, we get back to that super regional and make it to the College World Series. But the growth has been exponential. And even just the players' talent coming in has been so much better. There's really good coaches all over the country. And at the travel ball level, they're coming in with more knowledge of the game, more technology. And so they're already coming in at extremely high levels. And so it's hard to not continue to grow and continue to be challenged. So I'm grateful that I was able to be a part of that, and hopefully we get back to that spot in the next couple of years. Yes,
absolutely. Visiting with Hannah Flippen, a former 3-time All-American. In fact, the first 3-time All-American in school history here on Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi. Hannah, you talked about the growth of the program. You came in 2014. You had back-to-back super regional appearances the last 2 years. What was it about that group that allowed that level of success that quickly? Was it talent? Was it drive? Was it cohesiveness? Was it kind of the atmosphere around the program? What was it? Maybe it was a combination of all those things, but what was it that helped that group make that leap so quickly?
Yeah, definitely the chemistry of the team, for sure. We had that core group of freshmen and then some upperclassmen that led us really well. And so the culture that was created, the culture that we were shown our freshman year, just kind of grew as the years went on, which led us to those super regionals. And I think that our coaching staff had the competitive drive to continue to push us just to get a little bit better, even if that meant one more base hit a game or one more kid on base or one more crucial at bat, one more strike thrown, just continually pushing to get 1% better every day, 1% better every day got us there. But the chemistry was unreal. We just loved playing with each other. Anissa Ortez was my shortstop, and it was like we were reading each other's minds. Like, we'd know where each other were on the field, and it was like we knew where the ball was going to get hit. So it was just a chemistry that those teams had that got us there and give us that confidence and belief that we were supposed to be there and should be there, and had all the confidence in the world to win some games at that level.
You get to late May and the social media posts, looking back, 2 or 3 years, whatever, start to show up. And back in 2017, your team was in Super Regionals for the second straight year. But this time, you were able to host at Dumpke Family Softball Stadium. And, of course, it was BYU, the team you had to beat in that regional final that last weekend. You eked out the win 2-0, or made that 3-2. And the first of two, you come back and you clobbered them 14-0 the second day. As you remember those games 3 years ago, that awesome weekend at Dumpke Family Stadium that they have the big stage in Salt Lake. What do you remember about those games and those regional games in Salt Lake back in 2017?
Well, it's definitely like the highlight of my career, and the best memories that I have of Utah softball or of that weekend. because the crowd showed up for us and the alumni showed up for us, and it was just an electric place to be that weekend. And I hope everybody had the experience of being there, and I hope it happens again in the next couple of years. But it gave you that college World Series feeling, that feeling of the whole grass berm was filled up with people. All of the seats were taken. So the energy that was in Dumke Family Softball Stadium was unreal. And then to play BYU and to beat them on our field, the first game was a walk-off hit by Haley Hilburn, and then the second game was just a blowout. There's not like one specific thing that I remember from those games, just because I was on a high the whole weekend. And just like how I was saying that when I visited Utah, I was on cloud nine. That whole weekend I was on cloud nine. But I do remember that after we won against BYU to win the championship, to move on to super regionals, we did our little cheer at home plate that we do after we win every game. And the alumni were sitting in the stands behind home plate, and they were dancing to a song. And as I was watching them, I was thinking, wow, this is my last game at Dumke Family Softball Stadium. And I just started crying on the field. And I looked at Heather Bowen, our third baseman, and she was like, dude, why are you crying? I was like, I'm just so happy. And so that's like one of the biggest memories I have, is just being so happy in that moment. And to have my last game at that stadium be that game, I'll never forget it. And it was freaking amazing.
Yeah, that was a great weekend for a lot of us and all of us around the program. And you mentioned the alumni. The Utah softball program has had some great years going back to the 80s, and then World Series appearances in 91 and 94. And a lot of those alumni are still in town, and it was fun to see them out the ballpark that weekend cheering you guys on. And again, to have BYU standing there as a team you had to beat twice to get to super regionals, and to have your team do it the way you did with the dramatic walk-off and then the blowout was a lot of fun. And then the next weekend you go out to number 6 Washington, and a team you guys saw a lot of Pac-12 play. You knew who you were facing. There wasn't really any mystery to it, and a great series. It came down to the final game. You guys won game 2 of that series 9-8, and then just a narrow loss in the third game 2-1 on May 29th to end the run. But it was a great run by that team. You look back, Hannah, at those games against UW up in Seattle. Do you remember much about those in the super regionals?
Yeah. So the weekend prior, we finished Pac-12 with Washington.
Okay.
And I think we ended up losing the series 2-3. We lost on senior day. Like, I was freaking devastated. And going into once selection show Sunday happened, not that I was looking ahead or anything past our regional weekend, but I did see that we were lined up with Washington. If they were to win their regional, we won our regional, we'd end up at Washington. So just going into that weekend, like, my blood was boiling a little bit, because I knew that we owed them some losses. Like, we were going to go in there and do some damage. Obviously it didn't exactly end up the way that we wanted, but I remember those games fighting like crazy. And Washington is an incredible place to play. The stadium is like on top of you. All the stands are like looking down at you, yelling at you. Their band is in the outfield, so it's really loud, and just makes it another one of those atmospheres that you want to play in and you want to be in, and you want to be in that arena. So to have that experience was unreal. But they just showed the game on the NCAA website the other day.
Yes.
They replayed that game, and I watched it, and there's things that happened that I didn't even remember. Like, Heather Bowen had a missqueezed attempt, and I was on third base, and so I ended up stealing home and being safe for one of our runs that game. And it's just like things that I didn't even remember. And also the bases were loaded. Like, Coach A called a squeeze bunt with one of our better hitters up in a super regional game. And it's just like crazy, the things that you pull out of your playbook in order to win a game.
Yeah.
And that run ended up helping us. We only won that game by 2 runs, but yeah, just the atmosphere. And Washington's a classy program, and they always play the game hard, and they're always a good competition. And so having the chance to compete against them at their own home turf and stealing a game from them and keeping them on their toes is definitely a moment to remember. And sadly enough, a moment I won't forget is that I was actually the last out of the third game. And so I flew out to Ali Aguilar, who is now my teammate. So it's kind of come full circle. But yeah, there's definitely some moments that I won't forget in that weekend.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that part about you being the last out and that 2-1 loss in the final game. Well, what a great run that was in 2017. That team finished 14th in the final NFCA poll, 37 wins overall, 13-9 in Pac-12, the best record in the league since Utah joined the conference. And, the unfortunate part about softball is for so many, what you've done in college, that's it. But you've had a chance to continue playing professionally, but also for the U.S. national team. You joined the elite team in 2016 and then made the U.S. national team in 17 and 18. And then the big announcement last October, you were named to the USA softball roster for the 2020 Olympics. And that is so hard to do. I mean, the number of athletes that come through Utah to play for a U.S. Olympic team is very, very small. In fact, one of our gymnasts, Michaela Skinner, is trying to make the Olympics as well for the next time around. And I can't remember having, two on campus at the same time as you guys were. But that's tremendous competition, tremendous level of teammates to have when you're at that level. Just kind of tell us what that experience playing for Team USA has been like for you going back to 2016.
So, like I said, last at bat of my college career, I flew out to Allie Aguilar, and now I'm teammates with her. So it's opportunities like that that I'm grateful to be in the USA organization, not only to represent the country and the red, white, and blue, but to play with all of the girls that I got to play against. And they're the highest level that you can get at the game of softball. So playing with the top athletes in the world, top athletes in the game of softball, the game that I love so much. So to have the opportunity to play with some of the girls that I played against in college and not have to be fearful to play against them anymore. I get to play with them, thankfully, because they're just the best of the best. And that's where I want to be. And I want to be the best of the best. And I want to continue to compete with all of these girls on a spot for that team and a spot on the field. And so I think that's the itch and the drive that keeps me going, because it's the best of the best. And every day you got to show up a little bit better than you were before to be on that team. So grateful for the opportunity and happy to be doing it.
What's it like walking into those practices? I mean, you've got players in the national team that have been there for a long time. They are the best of the best. They're household names in your sport. And, I talk to athletes when they make the change from high school to college or college to pro. And all of a sudden they go from being clearly the best or one of the best in their team to just one of several really, really good players. And at that level, everyone is good. What's it like for you to walk in and see this name and that name, on jerseys and lockers, and know that, okay, I'm teammates with them and I'm competing for playing time with them? What's that like to go through that?
Yeah, showing up at those tryouts is really intimidating because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to perform that weekend. The game of softball is a game of failure, and you don't know if that's going to be your weekend to fail or your weekend to succeed because you put in all the time and the effort. But when you got Monica Abbott and Kat Osterman and Allie Carter and Rachel Garcia throwing against you and Kehlani Ricketts, like, you're just bound to fail. And so that's a little bit intimidating to walk into. But once you get on that team with those girls, we're all there for the common goal, which is to win the gold medal at the Olympics. And so at the end of the day, I'm doing what I can do to make myself better, but also push my teammate to be a little bit better. And that's what I love about the team aspect of softball, is that I'm going to compete and work my butt off to try and beat you out. And you're going to work your butt off to try and beat me out. And in the end, we're all going to get better. And so that's what I love about being on these teams with these high-level athletes, the Allie Aguilars, the Delaney Spaldings, and just learning from these girls. The way that they do things is different from the way that I do things. And so taking a page out of their playbook and putting it in mine to make me a little bit better. It's definitely intimidating in tryouts, but once we get on that team all together, we're there for the team and we're there for each other. Sure, there's some friendly competition within positions, but at the end of the day, we're all striving for that one common goal.
It must be quite an experience to play at that group and international play. You get to go to some interesting places. What's been your best playing experience traveling with Team USA so far?
Well, I've been to Japan 4 times now, I think.
Wow.
With them.
Yep.
And every time I go there, I love the country a little bit more. And so it's kind of full circle that the Olympics is going to be in Tokyo again, or next year. But so the fact that I love it a little bit more and get a little bit more comfortable with being in Japan, I think the USA team has an advantage in that way, is because we go there just about every year and play some games and play competition over there. So I definitely would say that the games over there have been unreal, and there's always huge crowds, like thousands and thousands of people showing up to watch softball. So those have been unreal experiences. And I enjoy playing in Japan because of the atmosphere that they bring out, and it's a high level competition, obviously. So
this shutdown's been hard for everyone, but especially for Olympians, where listen, it's once every 4 years, and to delay things for some of these athletes, it could be tough. I mean, if you're towards the end of your career and you're thinking, man, I've got to do one more year of trying to hang on, you have injuries you're trying to fight through, and you thought, okay, I could do 2020. Sometimes 21 could be a little bit more difficult, or you have younger players who have one more year to develop that they could come back and be better a year from now. So it's an interesting dynamic at that level to have something like this happen. And the Olympics for right now are scheduled for late July, early August of 2021. As you talk to your Team USA teammates, what's the vibe? What's the conversation been like as they look at a summer where there will not be Olympics as we had planned on?
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit of both. Softball hasn't been in the Olympics for 12 years now.
Yeah.
And so it's nothing new for us in that aspect. Like, we've always played without the Olympics and always played without that high of the every 4 years, here we are. So to delay it one more year, sure, it sucks. It does. But we've waited 12 years. We can wait one more year. But and we're just always continuing to look on that path of we're using this year to get a little bit better. We're going to get better from this. And so that's kind of where our mindset is, hey, we can wait one more year. It gives us more time to get stronger, faster, better on the field and off the field, whether it be mentality or relationships. I think we're benefiting from it for sure.
Well, as I mentioned, Hannah, you're back as an assistant coach for the time being, but that will not be the case next year as you again focus on your training for the U.S. national team and your pro career. So at this point, everything's been shut down, but I know pro sports leagues are hoping to get going at some point this summer. You played in the National Pro Fast Pitch League with the Chicago team last year. And again, everyone's trying to get going. What are you hearing right now about your pro league for later on this summer possibly playing?
Yeah, so the NPF officially got canceled a couple weeks ago, but the Chicago Bandits are still trying to do everything they can to get their players out to Rosemont just to get on the field again and to be together. Hopefully the state of Illinois cooperates and opens up and it's safe to do so. But Chicago's been very persistent on we want to do what's safe for our athletes and for our staff. And they're doing all of those things. But I'm grateful that even though the NPF got canceled this year, Chicago, Rosemont, and the Bandits are still trying to give us something to train for. Because in the middle of August, there's another league that's starting. It's called Athletes Unlimited. And a lot of the Bandits are playing in that league later in the year. And so just giving us the opportunity to have a field to practice at and have a place to stay and to train and to get better and to be with other softball players, because now we're all spread across the country doing our own thing. So just to be in one spot and get better all together is something that I'm looking forward to and crossing my fingers for this fall.
Well, let's hope it happens. I know a lot of athletes are in that same position where they're just hoping to get something going at some point in the next few months. You've got obviously a lot of playing ahead of you still, Hannah. You've coached a little bit here at the U. At some point, do you plan to get into coaching? What's the future hold for you?
The future? Oh, man. This was a decision to stop coaching this coming year was something that I thought about for a long time. I'm so loyal and committed and so in love with the University of Utah and the Utah softball program. So it was really hard to step away from it. But ultimately I knew that in my heart and in my stomach and in my gut that I wanted to play softball and I wanted to continue to compete and not just do it as like a leisurely activity. I wanted to be the best. And so in order for me to do that, I felt that taking a step back from coaching was going to be the best path for me. And putting all my effort into my playing career and giving the girls at Utah the opportunity to be coached by somebody that isn't maybe the same age as them, because I'm really close to their age. So maybe learn from somebody a little bit older, a little bit wiser than me, but also have somebody there that is just all in for them, because I wanted to be all in for them and all in for my playing career, and it was just hard to line up at that time. So I do think that I'll get back into coaching at some point, but I don't know. We got the 2020 Olympics, and then softball's out for the 2024 Olympics. It might be back in for the 2028 Olympics. So who knows how long I'll be playing, but one of these days I'll get back into the coaching realm for sure. Can't keep me away for too long.
Well, that's great news, and we're all pulling for you. Like I said, there's been just a small number of University of Utah athletes who have made their national teams, whether it's Canada or Andrew Bogut for Australia or some others. But to have you in position to do that, you've made the national team a couple times now, and obviously some hurdles to clear to make that official Olympic roster. But we're all pulling for you. Unfortunately, it's going to be one more year, 2021 now, before the games take place in Japan. But Hannah, congrats on everything to this point, and all the best down the road.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. Thanks for the time. Go Utes.
Thank you very much. That's Hannah Flippen, former Utah softball All-American, here on Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi.
Stay connected by searching for Utah Athletics on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Now back to more Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi.
And thanks once again to former Utah All-American second baseman Hannah Flippen for dropping by the show and looking back at her great run with the Utes from 2014 to 17, as well as talk about her team with the U.S. national team. We wish her and her teammates all the best. That's got to be such a tough thing to gear up for a chance to play in the Olympics and to train really for several years, knowing that you're going to be in that pool of people they're looking at to play in the Olympics, and then to have the coronavirus situation come up and have it delayed until hopefully only 2021. But we wish Hannah all the best. As she mentioned, she was an assistant coach for the Utes in 2019 after being a graduate assistant in 18. She relinquished her spot for the 2020 season, and will do the same for 2021 as she really focuses on her playing career with the U.S. national team and in the pros as well. But all the best to Hannah, and we appreciate her dropping by the show. If you have an idea for a guest, drop us a line and reach out to us on Twitter at Utah Athletics. You can also reach me at mlages@huntsman.utah.edu. Let us know what you think about the show, and if you have a guest idea, let us know that as well. We're happy to reach out to any and all former and current Utes, and also coaches and athletes as well, to just provide some entertainment for you throughout the summer months. Coming up on our next show, we will hear from another former Utah great, Emily Potter, who is a multiple-time member of the Canadian national team. She was an all Pac-12 player for the women's basketball team, but really made a huge impact her last year on campus. In February of 2018, she wrote an article for the Utah Daily Chronicle, really talking about mental health and her struggles with depression and isolation, and really for the first time came public with an issue she'd been dealing with for several years. And I know it made an impact on a lot of people in and around the Utah Athletics Department as well as on campus. And we'll talk to Emily about that experience a couple of years ago, and also a current project she has in the works to help people through their issues with mental illness. So Emily Potter will be dropping by our next show on Utes Insider. That will do it for us for this edition. Thanks to Mike Gilliland for his help on the show. I'm Mike Lagershow. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, so long, everybody.
This has been Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi. To hear more episodes of this show and other Utah Athletics podcasts, search for them on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube.